If you caught our recent episode, you'll have heard Dave Hannigan talking about the absolutely fascinating story about how a Kerry man called Butty Sugrue managed to convince Muhammad Ali to come to Ireland and fight Alvin Lewis in Croke Park in 1972. It's a fantastic yarn, and if you didn't hear it, I strongly recommend you do so. But Dave has lived in the United States for over 25 years, and so I couldn't let him go without getting the views of what it's like to be an Irishman living in Long Island at this particular time. Long Island, which is of course true Trump territory and all that comes with it. He's also a teacher and lecturer, and so is very plugged into what that generation is thinking and feeling about the whole affair. So this little extra bonus episode is for you, where Dave Hannigan and I get stuck into a right chat about politics, media, flooding the zone, and even the fall of the Roman Empire. Dave, the other thing I want to talk to you about is the fact that I'm talking to you in Long Island, and before the podcast began there, you were saying, I better watch what I say there. You never know, might get deported. And of course, that's the world we're living in at the moment. This guy has dominated our lives for 10 years now. He came down an escalator in 2015. And because he has held such an important position, we cannot escape him. And we cannot escape. Well, we have to address it, we have to, he's the elephant in the room that can't be overlooked every day. And he impinges on our lives in real ways all the time. And one of the things that you would have thought is the best thing to do with an idiot like him is ignore him. But it's hard to ignore somebody who holds that position in public life. And I'm just wondering, you've lived in America for years and years. You're in Long Island. What's the vibe over there? Can you even detect a vibe?
I'm going to tell you something really odd that's come to me in the last couple of weeks. I was in England at Easter for a week with my kids, and then I was in Ireland in March for a week. And I've actually realised that people in Ireland and England are even more obsessed with Trump than people in America. In terms of everywhere I went, people would ask me questions about Trump. I mean, like just people, when I catch up with people I went to college with or whatever, old friends in Dublin, old friends in England, they would be I was on a train in England, and once the person sitting across from me ascertained I lived in America, I was put on the spot to answer all these questions. I think you're more obsessed with it because you get a more rounded picture of what's happening every day. And you hit the nail on the head. It's every day. There's a flood every single day. The floodgates open. There's new stories. There's new outrage. There's new headlines. You get a more full picture of that, I think, than people living in America, because most people in America consume the media that reinforces their political views, right? So they get the story, but it's the version of the story that dovetails with their political viewpoint. So if they're on the right, they're getting they're only getting the positive stories. They're only getting these, hand-picked, cherry-picked aspects of what he did today. Where on the left, you're getting this, the apocalypse is now. This is all going to end very quickly. So I think you guys actually get a more rounded view, and are a little bit more obsessed with it because it's also a tremendous theater for people in other countries. It's a show. It's the very grim show, and it's reality. But it's also, there is a show element to it that, it's a car crash show, if you want to put it like that you're watching it and you can't look away.
So you're saying America is siloed, completely siloed?
Completely siloed along, every aspect of American life almost, I would say now is people are delineated into certain groups. The TV shows they watch, the sports, well, maybe not the sports, because the NFL, American football, as you call it, is the one thing that Americans still have in common, right? That's the one thing that crosses all party divides and all political divides. But everything else, even the music they listen to, everything now belongs to one camp or has been appropriated by one camp or the other.
Well, the danger is, as far as I'm looking at it from the outside, the danger is that this thing that Steve Bannon called flooding the zone, you know, which you alluded to there, that there's a deluge of stories arriving every day. Of course, that numbs us then to genuine stories and genuine issues which are going almost unnoticed.
You're absolutely right. Like in the week that we're speaking now, we've had the Alcatraz thing. An absolutely ludicrous nonsense story. He's going to reopen Alcatraz. It is utterly economically unfeasible. Okay, the cost of housing a prisoner in Alcatraz is 3.5 times what it costs to house a prisoner in any other jail in America. This is not you. They don't have fresh water in Alcatraz. You know, water had to be flown out there or brought out there by boat. This is economically unfeasible. It dominated the news here for like 24 to 36 hours. And it's a nonsense story. Nothing will ever come of it. But it absolutely was, excuse me, it was the headline. It was the headline for, you know, the tariffs on the movie business. I don't think that's a feasible story either, right? Got massive headlines, huge coverage.
It's nonsense.
So you have yeah, it's nonsense. It's like a movie is not like a car, you know. A movie is not
a movie is a collection of services offered around the world by various different people, including digitally sent to each other in all sorts of ways.
Absolutely. Like you're recording a voice in Dublin for a scene in New York, whatever. Anyway, those are just two examples, two ridiculous stories that will not amount to anything. He will never be able to do anything with those two, but they dominated the news cycle for like 48 hours between them. And as you said, there's real stories, real stuff happening in the background every day. Real stuff, real change, you know, real stuff that's impacting people's lives. And, you know, nobody's paying attention to the defunding of cancer research because they're obsessing over Alcatraz and you know what, you know, did he watch Escape from Alcatraz? Is that what inspired this? Where did this come from? And let's analyze that. Whereas we're like in the background, real fundamental changes are taking place in American society that are going to affect people for a long, long time. Mario, you write comedy. Like, how could you write comedy that would compare to what we've witnessed for the last 10 years? You know, like the last 10 years have just been so ridiculous and so outrageous and so preposterous.
Yeah.
And yet we're living it every single day. You know, there's a fresh storyline every day.
It's funny, you're the same age as me, and I'll just make a remark about comedy. For the first term of Trump, I had a very big difficulty writing about Trump. And I don't know if you can cast your mind back, but during that period, often we oscillated between periods of utter comedy, but then immediately soon afterwards to complete fear. And fear, when I say fear, I mean darkness. And I felt at times, I can't do any comedy about this guy because he's not funny. It's not funny. It's a clear and present danger to all our health and all our world. And so how can you make a comedy character out of somebody who's about to destroy us all, or seems about to destroy us all? Funnily enough, in the second term, so far, it's as bad as it is all comedy. It's all comedy. Alcatraz, movies, you know, everything that's happened in the last 3 months. It's all comedy. But I'm wondering, will we move now soon into this period again where it just goes, it's not funny anymore again?
I don't think it's that funny here.
I know.
Yeah, I take exactly what you're saying. You can have fun with it, and because it is so outrageous. But again, there's a cruelty. This is, you know, somebody made the point. Somebody smarter than me said a lot of the policies, the cruelty is the point. Yeah. You know, and that phrase comes up so often when you see something, you go, "Oh yeah, the cruelty is the point."
But Dave, the administration, you said looking at it from the outside, the administration isn't Donald Trump. The administration is Stephen Miller.
Yeah,
that is what it is. That's the characterization of it.
Yeah, and the people in the background like Miller, and there's a lot of dark characters there, you know, pulling strings, etc.
Yeah. You were talking about Ali there. We were talking about Ali, and one of the people that came to mind is another person who's had a big impact in America, and that's Conor McGregor. And Conor McGregor kind of intersects in this Venn diagram a little bit, because I remember watching him in 2012 and 2013 and thinking, do you know what? He's like Ireland's Ali. There's something... Oh no, back then for a moment to people, there
there was that potential. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the idea of an athlete who seems devoted to his craft, who's kind of able to talk, who's inspirational, who doesn't touch booze or drugs or anything like that, and is devoted to his to just being a champion and also to bettering himself. And you could have seen what an amazing influence that person could have been, and what he could have. The sliding doors just went completely off the rails there, Dave.
Yeah, and I first of all, his rise, UFC needed him because UFC was full of brilliant fighters who were not great on camera. A lot of them were Brazilian and they spoke Portuguese and their English wasn't great. And McGregor was a godsend for UFC because he could go on the late night talk shows and yuck it up with the hosts and sound funny and charming. And in America, an Irish accent goes a long way. It really does. And an Irish accent gets you indoors and all that kind of stuff. So he was, I think that they managed him because they knew that he was box office. I was at Madison Square Garden in 2017 when he won the second title. Even by then, I felt there was always something off about him. I wrote stuff in 2013, 2014, saying there was something not right about him. And he reminded me, it was very WWE. I felt the whole thing was stage managed by UFC to exploit the fact that he could talk and that he was kind of their cash cow. And again, the other thing to understand about this is UFC is part of the Trump administration now. UFC, Dana White he's not officially in the Trump administration, but he was part of the Trump campaign, and the UFC is the official sport of the Trump administration, if you want to put it like that. He turns up to UFC events. He has done very well with the UFC demographic, and McGregor. Obviously, then we see the intersection, as you call it, the Venn diagram between McGregor, the Trump administration, right-wing media. Like right-wing media here, aside from the Tucker Carlson stuff, loves McGregor and has always loved McGregor. After the rape case in last November, I wrote a piece for the Irish Times saying this will not affect him one iota.
Not at all. It means nothing over
America.
There.
No, it doesn't mean anything. And I sometimes I will see a student walking towards me with a McGregor T-shirt, and I'll have to stop myself from getting into it with a student about it because I'm like, this student doesn't deserve
Dave,
to be harangued by me.
But do you say, looking at it from the outside, and this is, talk about America, talk about Trump, talk about McGregor. This is what disappoints me about the whole American experience, and it's the fact that, like, if you say the word Trump or McGregor in America, they'll go, he wants to be president of Ireland. Okay? Now, they just will not go to the trouble of finding out anything else. That's not going to be possible, and if it was, that it wouldn't matter a damn. So when you're dealing with this level of, just willful lack of information, willful lack of educating yourself about anything, I just think that the background to all of this stuff has been the decline in literacy, education, understanding, basic mathematics, basic punctuation, grammar, English, basic geography. Since when you make yourself ignorant, you then are prey to anybody telling you anything. Do you understand?
I do, and I work in education, and there's a war on education. The administration has declared war on education. They put the woman from the WWE, Linda McMahon, is running the Department of Education with the purpose of closing it down, which tells you everything about where they want the people to be. And there is, to be fair to Americans, I will say this: their ignorance of Irish politics, I'll give them a little pass on that because Ireland's not a significant country in the American context, and that's fine. But if you are going to come out and say Conor McGregor is going to be president of Ireland, it does behoove you to basically pay some attention and look into this, see what the presidency of Ireland's about, see how you become president, and see that it's it's a ceremonial position, and that the fact or the chances of him ever becoming that are very, very minimal. And obviously, there's 100 reasons why he should never ever be in public office for anything because of the person that he has revealed himself to be.
Yeah, Trump is running the country through executive order, right? I don't understand even how that works. I don't understand how executive orders can actually be enforced. I don't understand how you can make an executive order and then a court says you can't do it, and yet then it's done. Do you understand that? And also, do you understand how Congress is not involved in the running of the country anymore? This one of the branches of government is not involved in running the country anymore.
Firstly, because they control Congress, and if you are a Republican congressman or woman, right, you will not speak out against this guy because the right-wing radio will basically destroy you, and you will not be re-elected. And they openly will say this. They will say, okay, Mario Rosenstock just spoke out against Trump. He's running for re-election in South Carolina. Here's his office number. We're going to primary him. We're going to destroy him. Your career is over. So they have just basically laid down. They have laid down, and they have the power to stop him, but they will not use that power. Yesterday, a Republican congressman yesterday said he will not vote for a Trump judge appointee. What they did not say about that man on radio as I drove home yesterday, because he will not endorse this judge, or this person who wanted to be a judge in the DC district attorney's office or whatever, the attorney for DC. This man's career is over. It's done. Yeah. So you speak out and your career is over. So, there were people, Republicans who've left politics in the last few years, who just said, I'm out because...
That's right. People like Jeff Flake and stuff like that. Yeah.
People who are just like, I can't be involved in this. I have to get out. And, people say to them, they're cowards. Whatever. I understand completely why they do that, because your life, the number of people in the last 10 years who have had to take out personal security because they took political positions against Trump and the administration. And it grows every day. And it's like, that should not be policy. You should disagree. I don't agree with your position on this, that, and the other. You don't agree with my position. Absolutely. We're opponents. I shouldn't have to get security men so I can go out with my wife to a restaurant.
The threats to personal safety, are a big factor in this. But you'd have to ask yourself, right? I mean, because what we're watching in here as well is like a petri dish, and we're seeing it from a helicopter as well. We're seeing our society in slight microcosm there, because it's not the whole world. It's America. We're looking over at America, and we're seeing this happen. And you're kind of going, well, what can happen? What is there a tipping point, if any? Or do we just slip meekly, quietly, gradually, and then very quickly into the darkness of full authoritarianism? I mean, because that's the way they say it happens, isn't it? Slowly, and then really quickly. But when is there a tipping point, Dave? I mean, you've thought about this. You teach history. You've seen it happen.
I've lived through this for 10 years, and I don't know what the bottom is, what you call the tipping point. There was so many moments in the last 10 years where you're like, well, this is the end. There is no more after this. This cannot stand. January 6th, when that happened, you're like, all right, that's the end of that. Like, that's the end of this movement.
Yeah.
And right now, the January 6th, people who went to jail for January 6th are heroic figures who are being compensated massive amounts of money. There is a push on. They are martyrs. And I'm like, I thought that was the end. But so to your point, I see us slipping further and further, because there is nobody shouting stop. Nobody has the guts to shout stop in his own party. And the Democratic Party is a woeful, badly run, inept, out of touch, if we want to say, how did Trump get in? Well, they have huge culpability.
But they have huge culpability for it. Got it, Dave. Absolutely, yeah. But to speak about ourselves as humans, isn't it us that's the problem? And I'm just talking about us as humans generally. We're the problem because we are afraid to get out of our comfortable sofa and make a move. Because, all right, okay, some of us have children, and I have children, and I have a wife, and I have a family. Okay, I get that. What about my kids? And also, some of us don't, but some of us are just happy in I don't want to jeopardize my $100,000 a year job in Goldman Sachs. Why would I want to bother? I'll just keep going here until, and maybe if something does happen, maybe I'll just ride it out. Maybe I'll be on the Trump side. I don't know. Maybe I'll switch sides to Trump sides. I mean, are we all just exposed as lily-livered, just, whatever happens, and then we slip into the easy lane if we can, I mean, you say, what's the tipping point? Is the tipping point then something more trivial? He talked about two dolls, where people are going to the shelves in Brown Thomas or the equivalent, or Walmart or something, and they're going, hey, what's the story? I can't get my iPhone anymore for $800. That's the tipping point. That's when people go, eh. In other words, consumerism is the thing that gets them going, that gets them.
I think so, because my point here would be like, we're selfish bastards. Okay, we are a selfish species. I'm all right, Jack. I think that's what informs, why people like Trump win elections, why people like Britain votes Brexit. I think there's a selfishness, and people believe the person that they think is going to give them the most. To your point, I think your point about the economic impact, or the consumerism impact, yes, I think that could be the thing that makes people start to think, oh no, maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. Everybody's pension here, everybody has a pension, or 60% of Americans have pensions vested in the stock market. Those have been hammered. Those have been hammered in the last month. And people have, my union sends advice: don't look at your pension, don't check out your pension. I think right now, that stuff, because of the basic selfishness that informs most of us most of the time, I think that, when Americans can't go to Walmart and buy stuff for dirt cheap prices that comes from China, that will affect their quality of life. Their pensions being decimated, that will affect their quality of life. And that may be it. But again, all I will know is, or all I will say to you is, we have not learned the lessons of history before, so I don't know why. And this is a unique movement, and part of the failure of the last 10 years has been a failure of media to realize this is not, Ronald Reagan in 1980s. The world has changed, the media has changed, and they cover elections like, oh, Trump did a bad thing, this is going to decimate his support. It's not at all. And you've got to forget that model that you had before. Somebody gets accused of something, that's the end of their career. Not here, not now, not anymore.
This is also worth saying, because you just mentioned it a second ago. The media. I mean, I watched him being interviewed by ABC the other day, Kirsten Welker. He is now able to say, the last election was rigged, as we all know. And she does not fact check him anymore. So they won't fact check him anymore. They've stopped. You now can spew outright lies without even being contested anymore. And that's surely close to the end game.
Well, yeah, but not, I don't think in a good way. I think it's close to the end game in a bad way. Yeah. In that, these are
but
powerful.
Do you not feel that yourself? Do you guys not remark about that? That you notice the change there? They used to
fact check him, but we're in a, I know this is a terrible phrase, but we're in a post-truth society. This is no longer a place where oh, this guy lied, we can expose him. It doesn't matter, because, and half the people who need to hear that this is a lie are not going to be paying attention to that interview. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yep. Yes, she is failing in her duty.
She
absolutely.
Is, that's what I mean.
She is, and there, and it's not just with him. I saw an interview yesterday with the transportation secretary, former Real World reality TV show star who now runs transportation in America. A sentence
Sean Duffy, is it?
Yeah, a sentence that speaks multitudes. And he wasn't fact-checked. He just said all the transportation problems right now are the Biden administration, hangover from the Biden administration. He gets away with that because he could, you can say anything and you're not fact-checked. It's, it's very depressing.
I know it's very depressing, but the only thing, I'm trying to just work out what the options are then. So the only thing that's going to happen in America that seems to me at the moment to change this is people on the streets.
Yeah, and there has been, to be fair, there has been at a local level, even where I live now, there has been protests in the last couple of months that weren't happening before. Thousands of people on the streets once a week holding these events, which give you some sort of hope. But the point you made earlier, I think, is really important here. You said, that the people in the background, Stephen Miller and these people, right? Yes, and Project 2025 and all these characters, right? But when Trump goes, the hope what I would think is hopeful for America is the cult it's a cult of a leader. Like, he is the cult. JD Vance is not the cult. JD Vance is not, it is a Trump cult. It is the people who follow Trump worship Trump. They don't worship JD Vance or Marco Rubio or Stephen Miller or any of these characters.
It's Jim Jones.
Yeah, they worship Trump. And so when Trump retires, I mean, he's getting old, whatever happens, when Trump goes, I think the movement will be weakened.
It's dissolved, but Dave, it's the exact same. Sorry, I know this is facile, but it's the exact same as the witch in Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. She's all powerful until the water is poured on her, but the army is behind her as the water is poured on her. But as soon as the water is poured on her and she disappears, the army just immediately turn with Dorothy.
Yeah, and the thing about that is like, you know, I the problem with that is by the time that day comes, like if he steps off the stage 4 years from now, the damage that could have been done is immense. You know, the what could have been done to this society is beyond imagining, really. You know, that's the concern in terms of the short term picture.
So do you worry? You said you had a kid in college there.
Well, no, I have two kids in high school.
High school, yeah.
Yeah, I have two kids in high school.
They're your future. That's their future.
Yeah, and one of them is very politically aware and one of them isn't. As is normal, I think, you know. But again, you know, people in Ireland, like in March, would say to me, like, are you going to come back? I'm like, I've been here 25 years. Like, you can't come back after 25 years that easily. You know, that's not an option. You're here for the duration, you know. Or you, at a certain point, you're here for the duration. You bought into it. So you want to ride it out and you hope you'll hang on and things will improve.
Yeah. By the way, sorry, thanks for indulging me, Dave, because I do a lot of thinking about it, and as a lot of people do over here, but I have to write about it as well and construct a bit of comedy about it and my thoughts. But the other one was that I had a comedian on a few months ago, but he started his career as a wrestler, and he indulged me in my theory, but as well, which was that Trump has modelled his whole political career on WWE.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to ask the wrestler, what is WWE? And he went, well, you know what it is, Mario. And I went, no, but my question is, do they believe in it? And he thought for a moment and he went, the answer to that is no. They don't believe in it. They choose to buy into the belief there and then. So is that the same as believing? Not quite. They almost hypnotize themselves into believing. They believe. Now, if they could talk to their rational conscious self, they would know it's not real. But they don't engage that, so they buy into it. And that's what Trump is. Trump has modelled his entire political career on, good guy, bad guy, look what I did, look what I'm going to do to the bad guy. You know, you cheer. And it's, for me, it's very much like that. It's a WWE.
And, you know, to add to that theory, there was a certain point, in a mere 25 years, there was a certain point where they started putting WWE coverage in the sports pages in New York. And that to me was like their sport, actual sporting events, baseball, basketball, football, soccer, whatever. And they put WWE in the sports pages. And I'm like, that's not sport. That's showbiz. That's whatever it is. It ain't sport. And you know, if we're going to talk about decline in civilization and credibility, you look at that and you go, that's just a simple, stupid thing, but actually tells you an awful lot about where
it blurred the reality. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like the lines are blurred, and somebody could really take advantage of that.
That's a very kind of almost that's a very interesting way of looking at the beginning of this sort of nightmare. Another more obvious beginning for me would be the moment that Kellyanne Conway says, we have our own facts, alternative facts. For me, that was really the moment where that changed the ball game. Because as we've all agreed, we have all agreed this, that if we can't agree on basic things like it's raining outside, we're all gone.
Yeah.
We're gone.
Yeah, and we're in trouble. We're in trouble then.
Yeah. Listen, thank you for indulging me, Dave. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mario. Loved being on, man. Thank you.
Thanks again to Dave Hannigan, and I do urge you to get his new book, The Big Fight, when they brought Muhammad Ali to Ireland in 1972 for the big fight in Croke Park. And my thanks, of course, as always, to Deluxe Bathrooms and deluxebathrooms.ie. in Dundalk Retail Park and Little Island in Cork. May Madness sale now on. My thanks to you. Tell one other person about this podcast, and I'll see you soon.